or to finish the statement I am, so this is kind of a standard kind of demonstration that you see in psychology a lot. I am blank, and you give 10 blanks and you let people fill in those 10 blanks. You get differences in how people fill those out from culture to culture. And so does anyone know kind of typically how it goes? Kind of two sides to it. Silly, but
Chinese cultures, like Eastern cultures, focus more on being a member of a group than on themselves.
yeah, so group membership or relationships is another way to think about it. So you will see a lot of I am a brother, I am a father, I am a son, that kind of thing. More often than you see in the US, where people are more focused on things that make them stand out, right? So there's always a tension between fitting in and standing out. And in the West, we tend to be more interested in this, in the East, a little bit more interested in this, right? So, and again, these two things are often in tension, right? So we want to, everyone wants to stand out, and also people want to fit in, and these two things kind of, there are times when you want to draw attention to yourself, and you get a green mohawk, and you realize you've gone too far, because you're standing out a little too much, right? Same time, you also don't want to, if you fit in too much, then no one will pay attention to you. So this is just kind of always, two things are always in tension. Like I said, in the West, in Western cultures, there's we kind of skew a little bit farther in the direction of standing out, and in the East, there's a little bit more of an emphasis on fitting in. Of course, this is related to consumer behavior. We buy stuff to help us stand out sometimes, and we buy stuff to help us fit in. So what are some things that you would buy that help you stand out? Ferrari is a great example. That does stand out. A tiger?
I don't think you heard that.
Yeah, exotic pets. No, people buy pets to draw attention to themselves, right? Single. Who are the single fellas in the class? Raise your hand. Got Judy, right? Who else is single? You guys need a dog.
Yeah, I like that.
What's that?
Would that work?
What do you have?
I was just wondering, would that work? As the class?
If it's a puppy, yes.
So many girls will just like donate it back and then get a new.
Just keep recycling. So what do people buy to fit in?
Clothing?
So what do you mean by clothing? Because you could go either way with it.
Well, when I say clothing, is a lot of people will like pick specific brands associated to clothing line because their friends wear it or they like that brand associated to it.
Yeah, good. So can you be more specific than that? I'm not savvy enough to know what you're talking about specifically.
Like skater kids, like skater shoes.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good. So anyone else? Because this is kind of an important point, which is people buy stuff to signal information about themselves, right? You wear stuff to signal information about yourself. Sometimes it's to stand out, sometimes it's to fit in. Michaela?
I was gonna say skinny jeans, that's kind of the new welcome that girls and guys are wearing.
Yeah.
Motocross.
What's that?
Motocross has like a very specific brands within clothes that if you ride motorcycles, you wear those brands.
Yeah, that's good.
I have a good example of that. Went to the Monster Energy Cup on Saturday and I had to get a Fox Racing shirt to wear to it. As a poser.
I have a friend who's super fashionable, and whatever. That's what it seems to be. She wears pants that have the crotch like 2 inches above the knee. You seen these? It's please tell me that's not going to catch on.
Yeah.
Please, I don't want to live in that world.
Are they jeans?
Yeah.
They're boyfriend jeans. Oh, yeah.
Are they, do you have some?
I do have a pair, yeah.
Oh,
But you
man.
have to keep yourself.
I gotta take a stand against those.
Wear
Don't wear
plastic
this
ones
one.
there.
Fix your credit.
So, yeah, this was, I kind of mentioned this earlier, which is, you get cultural differences in how people respond to this. This is, sort of a friend's daughter.
Look at that.
Eastern culture, Western culture.
With the hearts over the eyes, I would say Western.
That's kind of help. But, right, this is pretty much, very much about the individual, right? It's not, there's no kind of acknowledgement of relationships, that kind of
She's
thing.
so beautiful. She said not twice.
Nice, oh, yeah.
Oh,
Twice.
Brandon.
Give her a break.
Mary, that's great. Yeah, Mary's
All
the
right.
best one.
So, looking glass self, this is a really kind of old notion of the self. Goes back to 1902, back to when people called mirrors looking glasses. And it's the idea that the way we understand ourselves is based on how we imagine other people perceiving us. And there's an element of truth to this, which is it's hard to kind of imagine yourself as the life of the party if everybody ignores you. You know what I'm saying? Part of how we understand ourselves comes from viewing how other people perceive us, right? And if other people perceive us in a particular way, oftentimes that becomes incorporated into how we see ourselves. So the idea again is part of how we see ourselves is based on our guess as to what other people think of us, right? We're often unaware of what other people say of us, and so we kind of have to guess. And so the looking glass self is the idea that how you see yourself is based on your guesses as to what other people think of you. Is that clear? So a couple examples. You sort of imagine that other people see you as wealthy and successful. So what are some products that you might buy to kind of fit with this?
A wristwatch.
Yeah, a wristwatch, especially big, right? Big wristwatch.
Nice car.
What's that?
Nice car.
Nice car.
House.
People, you kind of imagine that other people think of you as outdoorsy.
Camo.
What'd you say?
Camo.
Oh yeah, camo. Good. What else?
Truck. Four-wheel drive.
Yeah, good. Athletic.
Nike.
Yeah.
Yoga pants.
Yeah, right on. So I didn't, self-monitoring, we talked a little bit about this. Anyone who remembers what self-monitoring is? We talked about this once before. Somebody who's not Roberto. Okay, somebody who is Roberto. There we go.
Your definition of self is more fluid, so I'm this person with this group of friends, but I'm this person with that group of friends.
Yeah, so.
I was just afraid of getting it wrong.
Is that based on how you imagine us perceiving you? Yeah. So it has two parts, and this is a little bit more in depth than we went last time. It's being attuned to social cues, and then also adjusting the behavior to create the desired impression. I forgot I wanted to show you guys this video clip. Actually, two. All right, I'm going to show you a couple clips. You tell me who the high self-monitor is and who the low self-monitor is. Maybe two. catch that there at the end?
Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
My mother believed and my father believed that if I wanted to be president of the United States, I could be vice president.
With the Ukraine crisis on the agenda, it was always going to...
So I'm gonna give you the whole load today.
Can you reassure your voters in this country that you would have the discipline you would need on the world stage, Senator?
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Biden. Number 2 spot on the ticket, the Democratic Senator Joe Biden of Delaware.
Faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
the duties of the office upon which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you. A man who will be the next president of the United States, Barack America.
Hillary Clinton is as qualified or more qualified than I am to be Vice President of the United States of America. And quite frankly, it might have been a better pick than me.
We were going to shut through the liquor section.
Tens of millions of Americans will be a whole lot healthier from this moment on. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama. Look at what they value, and look at their budget, and what they're proposing. Romney wants to let, he said the first 100 days, he's gonna let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. Back in chains.
You got the first sort of mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and nice looking guy. I mean, that's a story for a man.
Taoiseach knows a lot about it. His mom lived in Long Island for 10 years or so. God rest her soul. And although she's great, your mom's God bless her soul.
Is he still alive? All right, so differences between the president and the vice president.
Oh.
Obviously, one's a self-monitor. You could see this with Obama, right? Smiling with Putin. They don't like each other, but they're all smiles and handshakes. And then he's couldn't see who it was, but it looked like it was an Asian woman, and you could see he was bowing, right? He's attentive to social cues, and he adjusts his behavior to fit the situation, right? Joe Biden is the complete opposite. Part of it is there's a little bit of low self-monitoring and also a little bit of doofus, a light dusting of doofus mixed in. Can't completely disentangle them. But he says things without really being without his finger on the pulse of the situation, right? And so those two, I think, are kind of good examples of differences in self-monitoring. So when it comes to, well, we've kind of talked about this. High self-monitors skilled at conveying emotion. Can anyone here cry on cue? Are you crying?
I technically can.
No?
I've never cried.
Tim, can you cry on cue? You look very emotional right now. Nobody can cry on cue here?
I think if you gave me a couple minutes, I could make myself cry.
Really?
If you gave me a second.
Okay.
I can't do it.
Okay, you've got a minute, and I'll give you some points for the many, many quizzes you've missed. Is that going to make you cry?
I'm working on this.
Think about dying puppies.
You just have to not blink for a really long time. I'm thinking of horrible things right now.
It's for a good cause.
I'm just sad. I don't want to cry.
All right, we'll keep working on that. I'll give you a point for every tear. But it has to fall. It has to disengage from the eye on the paper. Yeah, that's just the standard practice. So high self-monitors, they tend to, we've talked about this a little bit, they're kind of chameleons. They also are more likely to ask other people questions about themselves. They are more likely to say things they don't necessarily believe.
So they're liars, is that what you just said?
They can't. I don't think of it that way, and they don't think of it that way.
Wouldn't it just be more like, someone says that the Patriots are their favorite team, they hate the Patriots, but to kind of be agreeable, they say, yeah, they're okay.
Exactly, yeah, that would be more like that. They're not gonna say, Patriots are my favorite team. They're gonna be like, yeah, they're okay. That kind of thing.
I'm being self-monitored right now. I don't hate your Patriots hat.
High self-monitors can be kind of perceived as phony, low self-monitors sensitive. When it comes to products, high self-monitors they're more likely to buy luxury goods. Again, this is part of the kind of, luxury goods are valued for the most part in society, and so when you're attuned to those cues and you adjust your behavior, part of that is, wearing things and buying things that have a positive impact on other people. This isn't a super strong effect, but people who are high in self-monitoring do tend to have a preference for luxury goods. They're also more likely to buy in-group identification products. I'll talk about this more probably in the next class or two, but this is some research that I did at Florida State where we gave people, might as well just kind of talk about the experiment. So what we did was we led people to believe that they were unwanted socially, and I don't know if we talked about how we do this.
We did.
That was twisted.
So there's lots of twisted ways to do this. This was the fake video feedback. Have we talked about this in here?
Yeah.
Okay, so we did the fake video feedback so people thought that other people didn't want to interact with them. And then, so we did that, and then we told them there was a second experiment that we wanted them to participate in. And in that one, we told them it was a shopping experiment where we were working in conjunction with the books. This is all total crap. We told them we were working with the bookstore to see some new products that they might want to have at the bookstore. And so we gave them, I think it was $10, maybe it was $5. We gave them some money and said, you get to buy something and you get to keep, whatever money's left over. That was part of their compensation for the study. And but we had Florida State wristbands. That was part of what we had in this fake store, right? And just to make it clear, we took them to a separate room, right? So it didn't seem like these two experiments were linked in any way. But I think it was 56% of the people who were rejected preferred these Florida State wristbands, whereas when they weren't rejected, it was about 12% of the people. And so the idea is that they're wearing wristbands to kind of signal that they belong to a group. This is something that you find more among people who are high in self-monitoring. Remember we talked about that tension, stand out, fit in. People who are high in self-monitoring are eager to fit in. High self-monitors tend to buy products their friends like. So impression management, just kind of talking about this generally, people are aware that other people form opinions of them and they come up with different ways of managing other people's impressions of them. Who is this and how does he engage in impression management? That's Morgan Spurlock you're thinking of.
He made what, Fahrenheit 9/11?
Yeah. I forgot his name.
Michael Moore.
What did you come up with?
His name's Michael Moore.
Michael Moore, that's right. Yeah, thanks. I like that.
Well,
So how is this impression management? Or is he a trucker?
He wants other people to perceive him like he's inferior, like not like actually inferior, yet poor, not really a millionaire, multi-millionaire she is now. He wants people higher up to think he's not as high up in the social status.
Yeah, he's an award-winning documentary film recipient. He's made a lot of money, and he dresses like he's borderline homeless. Sort of looks a little bit like a transgendered homeless guy. Is that fair? I don't mean that as an insult.
He's supposed to be someone on the street and use that.
Just a perfectly neutral observation. But this, I think, is a good example of something called symbolic self-completion, which is the idea that you buy stuff to compensate for something that you kind of fear is lacking in who you are, right? His movies are all about the common man, right? It's about the common man, and so part of the way he dresses himself, I think, is symbolic self-completion. He's worried that he's not a man of the people anymore, and so he dresses in a way to compensate for that part of his identity that could be lacking. Give you a couple other examples of symbolic self-completion. So, most common age to start smoking for males is kind of mid to late teens. How is this? Well, its logic might not be straightforward. The idea is you don't feel, at that age, you don't really feel like a man, and so you do stuff that's kind of risky to compensate for that part of your identity that's lacking, right? So at 14, you're not quite a man, and so you buy stuff and you do stuff that'll help kind of compensate for that. That's the idea of symbolic self-completion. Can you see symbolic self-completion here?
Makeup.
How so? Walk through the logic of that.
It's the same thing. Maybe like young teenagers will wear like a lot of makeup to make them look like a woman.
Yeah, so part of their identity, sort of the womanly part of the identity is going to be lacking at this age, and so they're eager to put on makeup as an act of symbolic self-completion. That part of their identity that seems to be incomplete can be completed by products, right? So cigarettes or makeup, that's symbolic self-completion. Who would buy books, a bunch of books, for an act of symbolic self-completion, and why?
I think like professionals, like accountants or lawyers, tend to buy books to make them look more intelligent.
So, at what part of their career would you say?
Beginning.
Beginning? Why?
Because they wish that they were like a top lawyer or top accountant, but they're not there yet, so they're gonna buy a bunch of books to make it look like it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah, so you buy these books because some part of your identity is incomplete. So the professional, right? Maybe you're an accountant, but you don't have any client. You buy some books. That's a way to kind of complete that identity that's not yet cemented.
I was gonna also say like older in the profession that aren't as accomplished as they wanted to be, then they might compensate by having the books.
Good. So yeah, that could be another one. Just anytime there's an important part of your identity that's incomplete or unfulfilled, that's where symbolic self-completion makes sense. Can you think of any other examples of symbolic self-completion? There's actually some research on this that's kind of interesting, which is for skateboarders, the ones who buy the high end, is it, I don't know, I'm not hip with the lingo here, but decks and what else is it? What else do you buy when you buy? Trucks, okay, trucks. There we go. That's it. The high, thanks. The highest end stuff is often bought by novices, right? So how do you explain that with symbolic self-completion?
You pay to be good, you need the very best stuff, even though you don't know what's going on. So like, the people who are really good at it, they understand they don't need all the bells and whistles. Their skill can take them where they need to go.
So let me just add to that a little bit. So people who are good at skating, their identity is not threatened. Their identity as a skater is based on their skill. But as a beginner, your identity as a skater is incomplete. And so you buy these products to compensate.
Would it work in the opposite way of like a midlife crisis almost, like older people reverting back to younger trends, so they don't feel like they have that young get cool component?
Yeah, that totally does work. That totally does work.
I feel like you're
Yeah, I
doing
was just
this.
thinking because my a buddy of mine just bought a Lexus, and I was like, "Hey, nice Lexus," and he said, hey, "My wife thinks it's a midlife crisis car," but I explained to her that's what a BMW is. But little did he know I had just bought a BMW. Which I thought he knew, and I thought he was giving me a hard time, but no, that was just his real opinion.
Did you tell him?
Later, and I was like, yeah. Oh, I pulled up later, and he's like, wait, did you buy that? I was like, I thought you knew. Oh. All right, so we're going to talk about the love of self. So this next...
Real quick, can you go back to the slide that said symbolic self-completion? I only got half that written down.
So while you're copying that down, we're going to talk about this concept, love of self. We'll talk about maybe 6 or 7 cute little findings that all kind of point to one kind of conclusion, which is people really love themselves, and there's no upper limit to how much you can love yourself. That's kind of what I want to take out of what we're going to tackle here on love of self. So self-esteem, people's overall sense of self-worth. A typical question, and if you were to take a self-esteem question here, I feel like a person of worth. This was a big deal starting in the 60s and the 70s, into the 80s, and kind of mid-90s, people started to get a little bit wary of the claims of self-esteem. One of the things that they found was that those original data that supported this idea that self-esteem is really important turned out to be flawed. And those original studies found that people who scored high on self-esteem questionnaires also scored high on things like ability to make friends, number of friends, GPA, various other things. And so the conclusion was this is a causal relationship, that people who have self-esteem are actually make friends easier, they're unlikely to bully, all this stuff. Turned out that there's a really simple explanation for that relationship. Any guesses? We just say it's all self-reported. Turned out that there's no relationship, for example, between self-esteem and GPA, or self-esteem and number of friends.
They perceive they have a lot of friends.
That's really it. It's what you find is that people who say nice things about themselves on one part of the survey say nice things about themselves on another part of the survey. And this whole thing just turned out to be not entirely smoke and mirrors, but it turned out to be really pretty unsubstantial. And so you can see this cartoon beginning to doubt the sincerity of the self-esteem program here. there's one state that had a self-esteem task force that the government put in place to increase self-esteem broadly.
Really?
Any guesses?
Please don't say it's
It was not Utah. But think flanky, there we go, California. So, and part of this, the kind of thing I want to talk about is this idea, if you talk to people who don't, if you talk to most people, they would kind of have this view that people suffer from poor self-esteem. It's emphatically not the case. So this is from last semester. The questions, that midpoint was there for a reason. The likelihood that 82% of the class is better than, what, if we were being accurate, what would these numbers be? 50-50, right? Same with driving, would be 50-50, right? Ethics, is this, well, I'm just gonna go over the ethics one. It's the first time I've included this. And we'll see if it's 50-50. So better, close, but better, better, ooh, worse.
That was you.
I'm gonna agree
For
with
what,
that.
driving? Oh, yeah, that one.
That was Jacob.
Just kidding.
Was it for driving? Because I definitely put worse.
No, this is all ethics. Better,
Oh, yeah, put worse
better,
there.
better. That's probably, there's probably 90-something%, right? Or higher. So the first thing is, people think pretty highly of themselves to begin with, right?
What do you think that would be if we did have us put our names on it?
You're the same.
Probably about the same, I don't know. Would you have marked yours differently?
Yeah, I would have worked everything differently probably.
Who would have changed if it were anonymous?
I was rude.
You were not.
What's it? So a couple kind of interesting facts about self-esteem. You, on average, prison inmates have higher self-esteem than college students. That
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
College is hard.
Let me offer another. Let me offer another interpretation, which is people don't want to think they've done anything wrong and made any mistakes, and you find that probably especially the case among prison inmates.
So you find people that do worse things?
Bullies. This kind of a common notion is bullies have low self-esteem and they have higher self-esteem on average, right? It makes sense, right? You think you're better than other people, you're gonna boss them around, bully them around. So bullies on average have higher self-esteem. So do people who stand up to bullies. So kind of that narrative's a little bit complicated. Risky sexual behavior, people, and this is something that you hear a lot when people talk about kind of kids today. It's, you know, if they felt better about themselves, they wouldn't act out sexually. Not true. Turns out that if you really, really high self-esteem, you feel like you're bulletproof and you can do anything and no bad consequences will come your way. So this idea, kind of not what you think. It's not all negative. Task persistence. So we've talked about those unsolvable puzzles that researchers like to give. What do you think the relationship is with self-esteem? What's that?
I think that the person thinks they can do it and will try really, really long to.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So that they continue to persist at the task with the expectation that they'll solve it. This is kind of interesting. A couple implicit measures of self-esteem. So ways to measure self-esteem that are kind of sneaky. And there's two that I think are kind of interesting. One is borderline stupid, but it's fun to talk about. It's called smell-esteem. So you smell the back of your hand. Go ahead. Come on. Sure, you're curious. I'm gonna assign someone to smell the back of your hand. So what did you notice? Who smelled something delightful?
Oh, no, it's.
So this is a measure of, so if you just smell yourself and you're like, damn, I be smelling good.
And you use bad grammar to become great artists.
Then that sort of suggests you've got high self-esteem, right? That's,
What would you define the difference between self-esteem and just confidence? Or is there a difference?
What about cockiness and confidence?
Confidence is overly confident.
these
But
are,
like, if I said, wow, I smell really good, people might think I'm cocky when I just smell steam.
so I can't tackle cockiness because that's too kind of, I don't know exactly what that means. That's kind of, it's a pretty broad kind of thing. Confidence, I think that a lot of times people who are humble have a lot of confidence too. So I would say that there's not really much of a relationship between confidence and self-esteem. I think you can, or maybe I don't know, I'm just completely speculating here, but probably a pretty weak relationship because, like I said, I think a lot of really quiet, hardworking people, you might find that they have a lot of confidence. The other implicit measure of self-esteem. This is kind of cute. You have people rate the beauty of every letter of the alphabet, right? So let's take a couple letters at random.
Oh.
Say.
K is ugly.
So any thoughts about the beauty of these letters?
Not till I consult your handwriting, but.
It's a perfect 10. This is a 9.895.
Close.
It's not that close.
Yeah.
No, so the idea is that you rate people who have high self-esteem, rate the letters. They find the letters of their name, the initials, more beautiful, right?
Tyler Stillman.
Yeah, these are my initials.
Yeah.
Got it.
See that?
Yeah, that's my bad.
Low self-esteem, so people with markedly low self-esteem, they tend to see everybody else as kind of a threat. They don't enjoy interacting with people, like I said, because they kind of perceive other people as a threat. Narcissism. This is a kind of this is a nasty version of really high self-esteem. Here's the things are, so traits like self-monitoring, all the stuff we talk about, it becomes clinical or diagnosable when it's bad enough that it disrupts your life or your relationships. So really high self-esteem is good. It becomes narcissism when you think so highly of yourself that it interferes with your ability to manage your life and it interferes with your relationships. All right, so narcissistic personality disorder is an exaggerated form of high self-esteem where you have such a high opinion of yourself that just it's not shared by the wider world, right? You think of yourself as in one way, and all evidence might kind of point to a different conclusion. So a couple thoughts about, I'm going to just start with infidelity. Narcissists, people who have narcissistic personality disorder tend to be unfaithful romantically. Why?
Always think they deserve better or something.
Exactly, yeah, they're always on the lookout for something or someone better because they think so highly of themselves, nobody quite measures up. They react really badly to criticism. So most people don't like to be criticized, that's right, we can all accept that. But when somebody who is narcissistic is criticized, they get downright nasty, right? So like I said, we understand most people don't like to be criticized. When you criticize somebody who's a narcissist, they have a hard time remaining cool about it. They make actually really good first impressions. Part of it is they expect to be liked. So when you meet a narcissist, chances are, at first meeting, you will like them. I don't know of any implicit measures for narcissism, I don't know why that's there. More kind of love of self. I promise I'm going to tie this into consumer behavior. Probably we'll get to it next time. But this idea of love of self, there's just a lot of different ways to look at it. Self-serving bias is the tendency to perceive oneself favorably. Two parts of this. There's false consensus and false uniqueness. False consensus is the tendency to exaggerate how common your negative behaviors are. False consensus is the idea that if you cheat, you're going to perceive cheating as more widespread than it is. If you drink and drive, you're going to see drinking and driving as more widespread than it really is, right? So it's you tend to exaggerate how common your faults are. False uniqueness is the flip side to that, which is when you do something that's good, you tend to exaggerate the rarity of that or how unique it is. So, grandmammy Patches collapses in front of you. You help her up. You will walk away thinking that you're marvelous, right? But that's something that really anybody in that situation would do. That's false uniqueness. Another way to kind of get insights into people is this poll. I'm no theologian. I don't know if if it's a voting process to get into heaven. Is it? Brent's a theologian. He doesn't know either. All right. So we start with OJ, 19%. Bill Clinton, what percent?
2. Dang. It's only off by 50. It's an even number.
This is a little dated. Princess Diana,
100.
Michael Jordan,
99.
100%.
Sure. He saved the world.
Nice. Oprah Winfrey,
50.
40.
Who said
climate
70?
right now?
Yeah.
Are you catching on to the thing? That's pretty good. Mother Teresa,
She doesn't get in.
If she has a 80% chance out of anybody.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, for real. Okay, she got the second most votes. The number one vote getter.
Jesus.
What are we talking about broadly? Broadly, what's our topic?
Self-love. Jesus.
Self-love.
Number one vote getter is us, right? So this is weird, right? We can agree this is weird. Mother Teresa takes a second place to us. Anyway, well, I'm going to pick up on this next time.